Good morning and welcome back to the littlest sewing room. Today I'm going to be cleaning and oiling my Falak FK-114 Chainstitch Embroidery machine. So in order to clean and oil this machine you just need a few simple things. First of all is pipe cleaners. I've also got these little interdental brushes which I use for cleaning out the nipple, grease for the gears, sewing machine oil, a spanner to remove your nipple, pliers for anywhere that you might need them, and a cloth for just giving everything a wipe down. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove the needle, the presser foot and the nipple. There's your needle. As you can see, it's got a little bit of gunk on it from the project I've been working on, so that I'm sure there's going to be more goo in the machine. I'm also going to remove this plate here so I can access the looper area. In order to remove the plate, I need to undo this screw here. So that's the screw out, and we just need to get the faceplate lifted out. It can be a little bit sticky, so don't worry if it takes it a minute or two. There we go, and that's your plate. As you can see, this plate also needs a wipe down. So now I'm going to take one of my pipe cleaners and clean where the needle fits and also down to inside the looper. Just push that down in there. Up and down a few times because there will be dust and fluff and oil and goo in there. Just take it all the way through. That's where your needle sits cleaned, and now I'm just going to go down the centre of the looper as well. I have my handle in the 6 o'clock position as if I am threading the machine. Take that down and I will pull it through the underside of the looper. One of the other things you can also do is take your looper out and clean it. I'm not going to do that today. I don't think it needs that level of cleaning today, but maybe on another occasion I will take the looper out and just check the looper for any dust bunnies that can gather in there. So that's your looper, and where your needle goes all nice and clean. The next piece I want to clean is the nipple. So it is a bit sticky, so I'm just going to give it a little wipe down. And then I'm going to get my little interdental stick and clean down and through the inside nicely. So also try and get into that area at the end and take out any dust or bits of fabric that could have built up in there. And that's your nipple nice and clean. So next I'm going to check that the holes on my face plate are all nice and clear and give this a wipe over. I can see there's a couple of holes where I've been sewing where fluff has started to build up. So again, I'll get my little interdental brush, give them a little clean through. Make sure there's no blockages. That's all nice and clean now, and give that a wipe over. I'm going to refit this onto the machine now. So now I've got my faceplate in, I need to think about what nipple I'm going to be using next and what needle size, because I will be changing the nipple and needle for the next project. So I just need to turn the faceplate round so the corresponding holes are above the looper where the needle will sit. I'm just going to check. I'm not putting my needle bar fully in this time. I just want to check that my holes are lining up nicely. So I've just put my needle bar in. As you can see, it needs to move slightly to the side so that needle will go straight through the middle of that hole. There we are. And then obviously I take my little screw and tighten that all back into place. So now I want to put my nipple back on and reinsert my nipple bar. I'm going to be using the same number 4 needle, but I'm going to be using a number 5 nipple this time because I am using a thicker thread. If I need to, I can upsize to a number 6 nipple and a number 5 needle. I'm going to do some practice stitches, which will be shown in another video, just to make sure that it's stitching correctly before I start my next project. So to reinsert the nipple, I need to make sure that this needle bar is all the way up, so you can slot your nipple underneath. It can be a little bit fiddly to get it in, and it needs to be nice and straight, and you just carefully screw the nipple back into the machine. As I say, this can be a bit of a fiddle. All the way up, and then just give it a little tighten. Spanner. And to reinsert my presser foot, I'm just going to check my presser foot is clean, which is not too bad, and give it a wipe over. Reattach my presser foot. So again, I need to make sure everything's right up. So I'll put my presser foot through here. You need to make sure this bracket is right to the bottom. Slide this bracket on. Then you see how there's this groove here and this notch here. These two need to match up. So you need to push your presser foot up and on so it's locked into place. I just push this down a little bit. You don't want to have this bracket that is on your pressure foot up too high, because otherwise it will catch a piece of the machine just in here. So you just need to do a bit of wriggling and jiggling to get it in the right place. So that's my presser foot refitted. I've just used my pliers just to snick that a little bit tight, not too tight. You don't want to strip your threads or get it stuck. As you can see, the bracket that holds the presser foot in place is quite low down, and this is into the notch here. So the next thing I'm going to do is wipe down all the front of the machine, get rid of all this old dirty oil best I can, and then I'll be reinserting the needle bar. Whilst I'm wiping it down, I'm checking all the parts just to see if there's any cracks or chips. We don't want anything getting broken on the machine. And turn the handle around so I can get to the other side. One thing you can also do is take your pipe cleaner, double it up with a little twist, and then you can just get into any little areas that you can't reach in easily. Just to check if there's any fluff bunnies gathering or anything else for that matter, and just give it a quick clean out. I'm now going to reinsert the needle, so I need to make sure, you see, because I am doing a chain stitch, I need to, when I put the needle back in, I need to make sure that that hook is facing towards me. So I will turn the nose of the machine towards me, and then I will carefully insert the needle bar so that this hook is facing towards me. If I was doing moss stitch, I would want the needle to be facing the opposite direction, but I'm currently just using chain stitch with the project that I'm doing. So one thing I do when I'm inserting the needle into the needle bar is that I will make it so that the needle is dropped down ever so slightly so it pops out from the bottom of the nipple, so I can see which way it's facing and make sure it's still facing towards me, which it is. And then I just tighten the screw at the top, and that's the front of the machine cleaned and put back together and ready for oiling. So for the purpose of this video, for oiling the underside of the machine, I've actually taken it out the table so you guys can see it a lot better, because it'd just be difficult for me to video it in the table. So what we need to do when we're oiling, that's really important, is that we oil anywhere where metal touches metal. As I say, this machine is still breaking in, so I will be using a little bit more oil than what you normally would. Normally it'd just be like 1 drop of oil. I might use 2 or 3. So let's zoom in and I can show you everywhere that we need to oil. So this is the back of the machine, and as you can see we have multiple points. So everywhere where there's metal on metal and it moves will need to be oiled, and your gears, which are obviously these toothy bits here, will need to be greased. So sometimes if you're not sure whether what something does, just turn your hand wheel and you'll be able to see. So there's a hinge here and here. There's this bar here that runs through the centre of the gears and works the worm gear. And then obviously you've got your handle mechanisms. So I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm going to bring this bar all the way out. I'm just going to wipe that little bit of old muck off there. Add some fresh oil to this bar. And then carefully turn the hand wheel so the oil moves in and out. I'm also going to oil, if you look here, you might not be able to see it very well on the video. Let me see if I can zoom in. At the back of that bar, can you see this little piece of metal that moves across? That will need oiling as well. So I'll just put a little bit of oil there. And I'm going to put some oil at this end of the bar as well, just to make sure I can get it all the way through that shaft. And then I'm just going to work the machine a couple of times just to get that oil in. We have another pivot here that will need to be oiled. You see just on this piece here, as it goes in and out that pivot side to side. Some of these areas can be quite tricky to get into, but just with a bit of patience should be fine. And again, we'll turn the machine carefully to work that oil in. We have 2 pivots here. You see, for this piece to work, this is where your stop action is for the machine, and obviously it connects to the handle as well. So we just need to get some oil in here. 1 drop should do. I'm using a little bit more because the machine is still breaking in. Just wipe off any excess that may be left behind from your oil, and then you've got your pin that goes in and out here. Now this can be quite tricky to get oil into. Usually what I do is I very carefully cock the machine back and drop some oil so it runs down the pin. Now I've oiled all the pivot points on the back, I'm going to put some grease into the gears. I just use this lithium grease that I got from, I think it was B&Q or somewhere. A good quality lithium grease will be fine. You don't want to use anything that's too heavy. I use this on all my sewing machines. You know, it's a good grease, it's great stuff. So you take your grease, and I like to put it onto a Q-tip and carefully distribute it through the gears. You can just blob it on there and then work everything around. I like to try and get it even. If you are using a Q-tip, just be careful you don't get any fibres into your gears. I just found this is an easier way to get the grease into fiddly areas in sewing machines. So the next thing we need to do is grease or oil our worm gear. And obviously you've got this shaft that runs through here as well as it goes in and out. That will also need some oil. So you need to put some oil in here and some oil here. So the first thing I will do is I will pull the worm gear back, which you do by turning your hand wheel. Put a couple of drops on the oil on the shaft here, here, and here. And I'm going to very carefully just turn my hand wheel back and forth so that's sliding through nice and easily. And just check. It's still quite dry there, so let's put a little bit more on. Because this shaft also turns as well, as you can see. So we need to make sure that's running really nice and smooth. I will just wipe off any excess, but I've got to be careful not to wipe too much off. Now today I'm just going to oil my worm gear. I will grease it in the future, but for now I feel it's still bedding in. It would be better off oiled rather than grease. So I'm going to make sure my worm gear is all the way out, like so. I'm just going to run a little bit of oil over those threads and just carefully turn it, because obviously there will be another gear mechanism. It runs against the looper and turns the looper, so it is metal on metal. It's coming in contact with the looper on a regular basis, and we just run that through there, and that way that oil will distribute between the worm gear and the looper. So now I've got the underside of the machine all greased and oiled. I'm now going to put the machine back in the table, and then I will show you what needs to be oiled on the top of the machine. So I've taken the plate off the front here so that you can see the internals of the machine. As I say, I will repeat again, anywhere where metal touches metal needs to be oiled or greased. The first thing I'm going to do is, this machine has 1, 2, 3 oil ports on the top. So I am going to put oil through these ports to start with. These are also the ports that you use for general oiling, you know, between deep cleans or deep oiling sessions like I'm doing today. So it just gives you an idea of where this oil is dropping. This oil port here feeds obviously to the shaft that runs the hand wheel. Here, as you can see, it's where the shaft runs through the body of the machine, and this oil port here will drop oil onto this area of the machine here. So it just needs a couple of drops of oil, 1 or 2. I might be using a little bit more. Like I say, the machine is still breaking in. If you also look on the bed, you see these holes here. These are also oil ports, and they have oil wicks in them. It's important to keep these oil wicks soaked, as they help the smooth running of the machine. They help keep the machine oiled underneath between these service sessions. Particularly if you're using your machine a lot, then obviously these make a big difference. I have them on all my industrial machines as well. Very useful. It reduces the number of servicing hours that you have to put into your machines. So while we're here, I am just going to top those oil wicks up, because it's been a little while since I've done them, I believe. There's also an oil wick around the back of here, which I will do now while I'm here. So I'm now going to focus on the back of the machine. Like I say, anywhere where metal touches metal is where you need to oil or grease. Grease the cogs, oil everywhere else. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a wipe out, because you will get a build up of old oil in here. The other thing to look for, how well we can see it here, let me zoom in for you. You see here, this is an area where oil can go through this piece onto the shaft behind. So you need to try and get your oil into that oil port there. I'm trying to see if there's any others on this machine. On this area of the machine. I can't see any other ports. There we go, there's another one here. So these are the areas where you need to try and get oil into as well. But first of all, let's think of metal on metal. So there's here, here, and then there's obviously down here as well. So let's do these places we've spotted first. So I am going to put oil over the top as well as into that oil port, because I find it just helps work the oil into the machine better, particularly as this is a funny oil port to try and get oil into. I'll drop some oil on here. I've got that oil port on the top, so I'm dropping some oil into there as well. Let me just turn that. There we go. Another area where we have metal on metal. Let me just move you. Can you see? Is this here? So this will also need oiling. And then you've got this big shaft here. This does have an oil port on it. I will cock the machine back and put oil in this port here. And then there's another oil port here, which will feed oil onto the shaft as it runs through the body of the machine. The next piece I'm going to oil on the back of the machine is in here, which is where the stop mechanism runs, so we can keep our stop mechanism working smoothly. I'm trying to see if there's anything else in this area that moves. Now I've oiled all the areas in the back of the machine, I'm going to grease these cogs here. So again, I'm taking my Q-tip, liberal dose of grease, and dabbing it onto the cogs because we want it to work in there really well. So next I'm going to oil into this area of the machine, just because I am working from the back to the front, and then after that I'll be going top to bottom. So I'm going to get into this area of the machine. I'm going to see where everything connects, where there is metal on metal, and then I'm going to get that oiled. So we have this shaft here that needs a little bit of oil. So shaft here into here, there's quite a lot of metal in here. Just keep looking for anywhere where there is metal on metal. You've got your presser foot mechanism as well. As you can see, my presser foot's a bit sticky at the moment, so I definitely need to get some oil into that area. So now I'm going to start oiling the front of the machine. I'm just going to do these back pieces first so you can see what I'm doing. Anywhere there is metal on metal or there is a thread, it needs to be oiled. So put a little bit in either side of this piece. here. Drop of oil down the centre of this. And a drop of oil down the centre of here. The reason I'm dropping oil down the centre of these two pieces here is because if you look further down, there is this large piece of metal here that does move up and down as you sew. So now I'm going to start working my way down the front of the machine, oiling all the contact points. As you can see, I've got one here and here. I'm going to put oil either side of this plate. Don't worry about any dribbles. We'll be giving our machine a wipe off afterwards. Let that oil soak in nicely. We've got around where the needle bar enters because, again, that area goes up and down. Top of here. I'm going to let that soak for a minute or two before I wipe off the excess. So our next area to oil is in here. I am going to oil these gears as well because, as I say, the machine is still bedding in. I feel these gears would benefit more from oil at the moment than grease. In time I will be using oil on these gears. We move down again and we have where the nose of the machine is. You see the presser foot moves up and down here. And then you've also got this bar on this side as well. So again, this needs some oil around where these springs are and the top. And the next area we need to oil is just in here. This moves up and down. And you also have this shaft here. And then over this far side as well, there is also a bar. I can't see it very well on the camera at the moment, but it does move up and down. And put a little bit of oil around the bottom, a little bit of oil around the top. And then just cycle your machine 2-3 times. Get all that oil all nicely worked in. And then just wipe off any excesses. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it useful, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.